Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Now today I'm going to show you how to win drawn endgames. Now even though the endgame is drawn, you can still create some chances to try to win the game. Of course, if your opponent doesn't make a mistake, then it's going to be a draw. But there's still some chance that your opponent makes a mistake, so you have to give him as many chances as possible. So as you can see in this position here, we have our rook and pawn endgame. Now the best move for white is probably something like g3 or f5, just protecting this pawn. Player with the white pieces actually took the pawn here on c6, which is a mistake. The point is that we can first take this pawn, and then on the second move we're going to take this pawn, no matter what. Even if he attacks our pawn, we just take this pawn and we're a pawn up. As you can see, we have 3 pawns against 2 here. So that's why taking the pawn immediately is not the best, because it can wait, You can take it on the next move, Something like this could happen and, white is not a pawn down. But okay, white took here on c6, and okay, we take on f4. Even though white is going to be a pawn down, it's still a draw, but at least we have more chances now to try to win the game. So now white gave us a check, we go to g6, and he attacked our pawn. Of course, we just take the pawn back, and he started advancing. So now we attack his pawn because, okay, these pawns are going to be exchanged. Of course, there's nothing else to do here. He advanced the pawn, we advanced the pawn. As you can see, his pawn is looks like it's dangerous, but it's actually taken care of. And we're gonna push this pawn up the board. He's gonna have to take it. We're gonna take this pawn, and it's going to be 3 against 2, which is still a draw, but we can at least try to do something, Of course, better than 2 against 2, which is a complete draw. So, okay, here white advanced his king. We also moved forward with our king. He moved forward, and now I played g5. This is a really interesting move, because a lot of times in these rook and pawn endgames, white wants to play something like g3 and h3 in order to exchange as many pawns as possible, because that's the best thing to do for the defending side. If we have less pawns, then we have less chances to create problems to the opponent. So playing h4 and g3 is really useful for white. And now after g5, if white ever tries to play g3 and h4, we can just take this, because after he recaptures, we create ourselves a passed pawn. As you can see, this is going to be really dangerous for white. So that's why moves like g5 are a lot of times pretty useful in these rook and pawn endgames. So he played h3, I advanced the pawn, he checked us, and we went back. Now here I was already thinking that, okay, this h3 pawn could be pretty weak in the future, and also I saw ideas of playing h5, and then if we take here, he recaptures, we can take this pawn after these 2 pawns are exchanged. So these are some ideas. Of course, if we play h5 and if he takes, this is our idea here. The position is still drawn, but he can still make mistakes. If he takes here, we recapture, and we create ourselves again a passed pawn on the f file. We really want to create passed pawns in all types of endgames basically, but especially here. So, okay, what happened here? White just took our pawn, because otherwise we would keep on advancing, and then at one point he has to take, of course, and we recaptured this pawn. So okay, this is still a draw, but like I said, white has chances to go wrong. He advanced the king, we checked the king, and now it's a critical moment. Of course, white has to go back here with the king to, protect his pawns, and then it's going to be a draw. After we play h5, he doesn't take, of course, and create ourselves a passed pawn here, but he just stays in the same place, and it's just a draw. So after we checked the king, he went to d5, which is really a bad move. Going away from these pawns, going away from the action, we just play rook to f4, and now this king is cut off here, as you can see, from the action, and we're gonna play h5 on the next move. He waited basically with the rook, and we played h5. Again, like I said, if he takes the pawn, we recapture the pawn, and now not only we have a passed pawn on the f file, but this pawn is also very weak, and we can try to, you know, go here with our king, and maybe even, you know, go for this pawn, like advance this guy here, and then try to take this pawn. This is also another plan, as you can see, if he takes on h5, but of course he's not going to take on h5. He plays rook to g3 because he has to protect this pawn, otherwise we would just take and win with 2 pawns against none. And now the immediate win is basically to just take the pawn after he recaptures with a pawn, of course, not with a rook, because this endgame is just losing with a pawn down. We then just play f5. Now, why is this winning? It's winning because after he takes into recapture, this king is out of the game. As you can see, it's not. This king should be here for the game to be a draw in front of the pawn, but now it's cut off, and it can't help, you know, the rook defending against the pawn and the king marching up the board. As you can see, the point is that on the next move we're going to push the pawn over the middle of the board, and this means that, okay, I can show you. This basically means that whatever he does, we're going to be able to just come closer with the king, and, you know, then just advance our pawn to the victory. So, you know, just like this, and now it's just an easy win. We can play, for example, our rook here. The point is that we want to go here without him giving us checks, and on the next move we promote the queen. Also winning is something like this, you know, and then whatever he does, we just go here, and we want to promote. After a check, we just go here, and we're going to promote on the next move. So everything is winning here. I just wanted to show you this because it's really important for you to know how to win this, to actually come up with a move such as taking here on g4 and then f5, so you know that it's winning. But I didn't play this winning line. I played king to h6, which is still winning. You know, I'm giving the player with the white pieces the chances to still, you know, take or something, or make a mistake. My idea was that, okay, I wanted to do a little triangulation with my king. So then after he goes here with the king, it's my move. My ideas initially were to play h4 like I did. The idea was basically that this pawn is very weak. I wanted to somehow get my rook here to g3. So then, you know, if the rook moves, we just take the pawn and win the game. And if the rook takes the pawn, I wanted to promote this pawn to a queen. But the point is that we're a little too slow. If we try to do this, he goes here, and after we go here, he can just take, and he just stops the pawn. So this idea doesn't work, but it's still winning. You just have to find the right move here, and it's basically the only logical move in the position, and it's f5. We want to create a passed pawn to win the game, basically, so this is the only logical move here. And white also just has to take the pawn, otherwise we're gonna take here and just, you know, again beat 2 pawns up here. So he took, I recaptured, and he played his rook here. Now my idea was the whole time to just play rook to f3 here, and then there's no way to defend this pawn on h3. But I was really exhausted. We have been playing this game for like 5 hours or something, and I just wasn't okay anymore. So I just started seeing that after I play rook to f3, he checks me. I go here, I have to protect the pawn, of course. And then I just, for some reason, thought that he would take my pawn here on g5 with the king, something like this. but of course I just have rook to g3 and everything is protected and we're just winning, of course. But you know, I wasn't okay, so that's why I didn't go for that line. Of course, if he starts just giving us checks, then okay, now we go here and we're gonna take this one on the next move, or this, and we take the pawn. Just completely winning position. But yeah, that's why I played rook to f7 here. After he checks us here, the only move is rook to g7, otherwise we just lose the rook. So we play rook to g7. My idea was that after the rook moves, my idea was to play g4, just trying to create a passed pawn. But he can take the pawn after we play this. The point was that if he moves the rook and tries to save save it from queening, he would have to do this. But then it's really interesting that we just go up the board and we attack the rook and we're just winning. So this doesn't work for white, but the problem is that he can just take the rook. And I thought that, okay, we're just going to now queen with the pawn. But the point is that we're kind of too slow, because he just plays this move and he comes right in time, you know. He pushes, we push, and he promotes the queen. So it's actually a draw. So that's why this didn't work. And but another way to draw, which my opponent found, and that's why rook to f7 was such a bad move. Another line is to just take the rook and go into king and pawn endgame. You know, usually in king and pawn endgames, if you're a pawn up like this, you're winning. But here, it's actually not like that, because he just goes here, attack your pawn, we defend it, and the point is that we can't really advance this pawn. He can just play king to e3. We can't go in because all these squares are protected. We can't push the pawn because he just takes, and it's an h pawn, which means that if he gets to the corner, it's just a draw, you know. So that's why this is just a draw after king e3. Now, the funny part is that my opponent went to g2. Now, I was so shocked at this moment. Like I told you, I wasn't alright, but I still knew that this is losing here. This is a really bad move, you know. Just king e3 not letting me in. Like, king g2, why do we play this? I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, we can just step into opposition here, diagonal opposition, and when he moves, we're just going to get in, you know, we're just going to take his pawn, and after a couple of moves, as you can see, we can just take the pawn and win the game. So I really didn't understand this king g2 move. My opponent had an easy draw with king e3. I had like 3 minutes on the clock. She had like 20 minutes on the clock, and I was really shocked here after king g2. But yeah, what I think it's really important here is that a lot of people would just agree to a draw in this position, you know? But I would never do that. I would always at least try to create something, as you can see, because if you don't try to do something, then it's gonna cost you points. As you can see, I tried and I succeed. You know, your opponent is not a robot. He's going to make some mistakes. And still, in a drawn position here, sometimes it's still easy to mess up, as you can see. You know, just attacking the rook, okay. But sorry, you're out of the game now and you're suddenly losing. So guys, never give up too early. And it's the same with resigning the game. I almost never resign. Unless I have just a king and really no chances to draw the game. But there are always some tricks and you have to try them. So yeah, that's it for the day, guys. If you like the video, please subscribe, share the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.